It's my pleasure to introduce to my colleagues Deanna Gonzalez, she's the New York State Partnership Liaison with the Office of Engagement Initiatives. Many of you met her last night at dinner. And my colleague at Cardi, Heidi Mueso-Kunzman, who is also a Senior Extension Associate in Development Sociology. So,
all right, I'm going to let you launch, Deanna.
Thanks everyone. There's not anyone in this room who isn't aware that there are many challenges in this work. We started off with two very difficult panels yesterday morning that sort of gave us this idea about the history that we're still reeling from and the narratives that we're still steeped in. And that really rang true for me. I like to get those things said up front so that we know the landscape we're working with. But we also know that there are so many success stories, and I think of Erin Bartley, who said yesterday, it's not all doom and gloom. It was never all doom and gloom. There were always inspirations going on. And that's what we wanted to focus on for our panel today, these inspiring opportunities. So the goal of this session is to talk about those. And I just wanted to give a shout out to Derek Crossman, who I actually think has left for the day because he's a student in city and regional planning and he had to go to class. Derek is also the City of Utica's Department of Urban and Economic Development. He's a member of the conference planning team, and it was Derek's idea to have this panel. He just insisted that we have to have a panel to talk about successes. And so I wanted to thank him for that. So we're gonna have 5 success stories today, 5 examples, starting with programs that are focused on specific communities, and then moving out to programs that are administered or operating with county or multi-county at a multi-county level. Thanks. I'll have Heidi introduce.
Okay, so I'll just note really quickly that we asked our panelists today to go with a set group of slides, so we kind of constrained them in that way, and I think there's so many more details that they probably have to share, but we wanted you to have a common sense across the same kind of topics for each presentation, so with a little bit of their own personalization of the slides that'll look familiar with each one. With that, and they are lightning rounds, so we asked them to stick to 9 minutes. So this is actually really important, and it sounds like I'm going on ad nauseum for a lightning round, but the important part about this is that we wanted to leave plenty of time at the end to come back to you. And in the other instances, we've said, we welcome your questions, we want you to chime in. I'm giving you all a heads up, so be fair warned. I'm calling on you, because all of us have success stories or things that are going good in our programming that we're proud of. So if I don't see you all jumping up to share what you're doing, I'm pointing to you and coming around and handing you the mic, okay? You're warned. Okay, with that, I'm gonna introduce Christine Marino, who is with the Department of Community Development with the City of Niagara Falls. And Christine is gonna talk about the City of Niagara's efforts to reduce their zombies through legal action and also really deep level work with banks.
Hello, welcome to the lightning round. The term makes me anxious because I'm like, time constraints, this is crazy. It's either a 5-minute thing or a 20-minute thing. There is no in between, so I'm gonna do my best. So the issue, zombie properties in the city of Niagara Falls. I'm assuming that most of you are aware zombie is a legal term. A zombie is relative exclusively to mortgage encumbered, vacant, abandoned properties, 1 to 4 units, yada, yada. So it's not inclusive of all vacants, it's inclusive of just this one narrow strip of them. For a little bit of background, in the city of Niagara Falls, at our highest, we had 165 properties that were registered with the Department of Financial Services. That registry is mandated by the law. That registry was also very difficult to get at the time when we started. Looking at that list, we had 34 banks total responsible for the 165 properties. I think this is interesting. 40% of those properties were held by only 4 banks. So that's, what, like 65 properties or something? That 4 banks are responsible. That's significant, I think. Also significant, all the properties were evenly spread across the city. So they weren't favored in the traditional lower income areas how we originally thought. We saw them, it was crazy how evenly spread they were across the city. So the next thing is the approach. When I started, I didn't have a background. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a planner. I owned a construction company in New York City, so I had that. But I was not like a public sector worker before then. But looking over the grant, I was like, okay, clearly we want to leverage the law. We want the state has given us this gift, and we want to see if it works. So I'm like, my first goal is to get something in state Supreme Court to see if there's any teeth here. Second to that, actually not even second to that, equal to that, building relationships is so important. I think a lot of you know that based on my assumed line of work that you all are in. I actually don't know what most of you do. But just in life, connections matter, relationships matter. So I was like, it would be really great if maybe we could bypass the whole legal thing. I mean, like state Supreme Court takes a long time, right? What if we could just bypass that and based on relationships, just get the job done? Which sounds really like Mr. Rogers, but it works. So my background is really operations focused. I love a good process. Why? Because I hate doing the same work over and over again, and I hate it when two people are doing the same work independent of each other, but like towards a common goal. I'm like, oh, why don't you just streamline that process? I love a process map. I love things relative to that. So I was like, there will be a process. And my test was, I'm gonna hire an intern over the summer, and if the intern can pick it up and make this thing run without doing a lot of work and a lot of onboarding, that'll mean I've been successful in creating a process. And that was successful. I had a really great intern. So speaking to the legal piece, actually, I guess a little bit of background. I was sitting at my desk just messing around with a lot of data sets one day, and I had sorted my list based on the banks, and I'm like, oh, interesting, like just a few banks are responsible for the majority of the properties. I wonder if that is something that we could leverage in court. So up until this point, a lot of other municipalities were sending like one property to state Supreme Court or to their local housing court. If they were like Buffalo, New York, they have those special courts. Again, not a lawyer. So I was like, wouldn't it be cool if we just, instead of sending a property to state Supreme Court, we sent a bank and all of its properties to state Supreme Court and see how that holds up. So that's what we did. That was a strategy that was formed that day. And my legal team was like, yeah, this is great. Nothing wrong with it. We'll try it out. So step one, identify the banks and all of the properties that they're responsible for within your municipality. Second thing, I think it's pretty obvious. You have to inspect the properties per the law. There are certain things that qualify and certain things that don't. And the third thing is sending a letter to the bank. That's because the law requires it. Also, this is a really easy way to build relationships. So we picked a bank that had a moderate amount of properties. I think it was like 8 or 9, because the one that had like 30, we were like, that's a lot. If it doesn't work, that'll be not a good day. So we're like, 9 is good, we can shoulder that. So I sent a letter to the bank, and the letter was like, hey, I'm Christine Marino, City of Niagara Falls. You have like all these properties, here are the addresses. Also attached are the violations. You might want to look them over. I highly suggest you give me a call and we can talk about this. Or you can bring them compliant within, I think, 30 days. If you don't, we're going to take legal action. So right here is where a lot of the relationship building happened. A lot of people did contact me, and they were like, oh, I was surprised at how many were not aware that it was even a problem. They were like, oh, we had no idea. Cool, like we'll take care of it. That's a great day. Easy breezy. So we got compliance that way. There was one bank that was unresponsive to all kinds of communication from me. And I'm like super persistent, if you don't know me. Like I will find you, is how that goes. But the contact I had was just really evasive, and I was like, oh, cool, like fine, we get to do this, right? So we kind of gear up legally and initiate this thing in state Supreme Court, and almost immediately we got a response. Like this bank sent their top vice presidents and their top legal counsel to Niagara Falls to meet with me. I was like, oh, cool, this is great. But we ended up settling that case out. And a lot of people are like, oh, how much money did you get? We didn't get any money. I don't really care about the money. I care about compliance and remediation, right? I care that in those 9 properties today, people own them, families live in them, they're additive to the community. I think that's kind of the win more than this like monetary dollar amount. Money is cool, but also isn't community stabilization better, right? I forgot to click my thing. So legal action sort of forged that relationship with that bank. Because now if they have anything come on the DFS list, I know who to call. They take care of it immediately. So evidence of success. Right now, if you picked any property off of our remaining list and you went to it, you would find 100% compliance on just zombies. Like, I want to be specific, it's just the zombies. The other vacants are not part of this. I have a relationship with most of the banks on our list, and we only have 10 banks left. I think might be, yeah, here we go. I have about 25 properties registered with the Department of Financial Services now, which is pretty good considering that we started with 165 at its highest. I'll take 25 over 165 any day. 140 of those properties have completed foreclosure, and just about all of them have been marketed by the banks, and people are doing things with them now. So they're not just these vacant abandoned eyesores. 40 successfully utilized the expedited foreclosure, which I think is great because that was a new piece of the legislation. We didn't have that option before. Also, pro tip, it's not required by the law. You can't mandate that a bank puts a property through the expedited foreclosure. You sort of have to compel them to do so, which is why relationship building is so important. Because if you're kind of a jerk, they might not want to do that for you, right? We have 10 properties currently waiting to complete the expedited foreclosure. So at the end, we'll have a total of 50 that have gone through it. Win. We have one completed foreclosure that was put through our homeownership auction by M&T Bank. They've been a really great community connection. I'm not allowed to call them a partner, some legal thing. You lawyers. But they've been a really great bank to work with. They're willing to try new and innovative things that are advantageous to the community. And we've had 4 properties demolished at no cost to the city. We talked a while ago about how expensive demos are, so the less amount of demos we have to pay for, the better. Visually, what does this look like? It looks like this. This is 1918 Linwood. It looked like the property on the left for like 10 years. And I've only been with the city like 3 years, so this has been a whole problem property. But leveraging a relationship with the bank, I think this one was Penny Mac, it was a matter of like one phone call. And they were like, oh, that's what it looks like? That's crazy. We'll put a roof on it. And then shortly thereafter, they completed the foreclosure, and now a beautiful family lives in this house. It's a husband, wife, and like their 4 kids. The property is beautiful now because they renovated it. Funding and key resources. This would not be possible without Zombie 1.0 and now 2.0 and hopefully 3.0 funding. We would not have been able to do any of this. Of course, the law, the Zombie Property and Foreclosure Prevention Law, really provided an avenue for remediation. Relationships with banks, I get most of the things that I need done by leveraging those relationships. If I didn't have those, who knows how many vacancies or zombies we would still have. The DFS registry, though a little bit elementary, and I see a lot of room for improvement there, it's a nice starting point because it gives you a road in. Access to public records if you need to research properties and see what's really going on. Like the open properties in Niagara Falls are mostly estate issues that are just going to have to run the course of the normal foreclosure process. And also dedicated staff. I am a party of one with outside of my intern with the Zombie Fight Project, but having someone whose sole focus is this piece has been really, really helpful. I don't know that it would have gotten done, whether it was me or someone else, just wouldn't have gotten done. I think this is the last slide. The lessons learned. Most importantly, the law works, so I would encourage everybody to use it, right? It's like a restraining order. It doesn't matter if you have a restraining order if you don't call the police when it's violated, right? So you have to use it to kind of reap any benefits from it. Enforcement can turn into a win-win partnership. That was very much my story. Enforcing the law caused a lot of banks to call me once they caught wind of this lawsuit. I remember Aquin, I think they're now PHH or whatever, they called like immediately and they were like, we know we have like 50 properties in your city, like please don't sue us, we just want to work with you. And I was like, oh great, because I don't want to sue you either. I don't love court. Persistence is key. Like I said, I'll find you. I think there is that, the persistence piece of it, but also being kind and community focused about it is key. And having an adaptable model is important. I took this like agile approach. I was just like, we're going to try things. We're going to fail fast. We're going to go back, tweak it, try it again, and see what sticks. And that's what really worked for me. I think that's the last. Yeah, that's the last slide. Cool. Thank you.